Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of Champion Standard. I'm your co-host, Brad, as always, joined by Rob on the other side of the glass. Before we get started, please like, comment, subscribe. We're on everything out there: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio. You can visit our website as well at championstandard.com. All one word. Just all the comments would be great. Just hit that like button when you can. Today we're going to dive into a little spring sports like we always do during the spring, and then after that we're joined by our first guest on Champion Standard, JY from the Football Brainiacs. Yeah, get to dive into the offensive line from an offensive lineman, so that's fitting. So we're really looking forward to that. First guest. You can only have one first guest ever, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, we picked a good one too.
We did. Looking forward to that. So before we do that, just a few updates on spring sports. We'll start with the baseball team. Baseball team started their regional down in Norman Friday night and ended up putting it on Oral Roberts and beat them 14-0. Beat them two touchdowns shutout.
Yep. That was a fun game to watch, man.
It was. They kept piling it on. The only bad thing about that is you can't carry runs over to the next game because we could have used a few. Saturday night we ended up playing UConn, the 3 seed in the region, and ran up against really good pitching performance. I think the guy's last name UConn. His last name is Quigley. Quigley down under. He threw 124 pitches, held us to 1 run. We just couldn't figure him out. We stranded a few guys on base, ended up losing the game 4-1. Hung in there till about the 8th inning, and I think they hit a 3-run home run, give them a 4-0 lead. We got a run back, but just couldn't catch up. So backs are against the wall. They play Duke today. They're probably underway already. If that's an elimination game, if they can beat Duke, then they will have to play UConn twice. So I think they'll play UConn later this evening, and then if they win that, I think there'll be a game tomorrow. See who advances out of the region. So
yeah,
hopefully they can keep it rolling. Moving on to the softball team. Started tournament Thursday afternoon with a really good performance. Beat Duke 9-1. Really comfortable game for Kelly Maxwell to go out and pitch and get a lot of run support. We had 3 home runs, Kenzie Hansen, Elena Torres, and Sid Sanders. It was good to see Sid Sanders get a home run. She's kind of been in a pretty deep slump. So if she continues to struggle and we just get a home run out of her now and then, that'll be just fine,
Yeah. I mean, Chris Plank was saying that, in the practices he's been going in and watching, that she's one of the most powerful hitters on the team. She's just, like you said, just in this like slump that she needs to pull herself out of. But she had a great day. All the batters for OU were just taking turns with 2-run home runs.
Yeah. No, that was a good, comfortable win. Good way to start. And then they moved on by winning Thursday. They moved on to the Saturday winners bracket and played UCLA. And Kelly Maxwell just pitched a gem. I don't know how else you can put it. All the stakes. I don't know. She pitched 115, 116 pitches, 11 strikeouts, only 2 hits.
That's a great day in the circle, man. You cannot get any better than that. That's top notch. Wow.
And
man, is she catching heat right now, man? Is she ready? I mean, my goodness.
Yeah,
With the second
quite
game,
hot. Mm-hmm.
she's hot, man. Got to rest her up and get her ready to go in the next one.
Yeah. She struck out, All-American Maya Brady 3 times of her 4 plate appearances. And we were all probably sitting on the edge of our seat there in the bottom of the 7th or top of the 7th, whenever it was, when she came to the plate and could have tied it up. And she struck her out. And yeah, that was something else. I'm glad
Yeah.
she seems to be kind of getting her groove back here just in the nick of time. So only run of the game was Tiara Jennings' solo home run, which, by the way, Tiara and Maya Brady are really good friends and grew up together. And I saw them, talking to each other before the game.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Maya Brady's birthday yesterday as well. So yeah, they were chatting a little bit. So we move on to the the semifinals, which will start tomorrow. As long as they can get in all the games today, which I think they can. There's just 2 scheduled today, but I know they got pushed a little bit with the rain. So we just need to win one tomorrow. And we don't know who we're playing yet. It'll be the Florida-Alabama winner.
Yeah.
I don't know who I'd rather see, but just need to win 1 out of 2. And I love our chances when it's a series and we have to win 1 out of 2 or 2 out of 3. I just think OU's just a hard team to beat more than once,
Right. Yep.
So I think that the first pitch tomorrow, I want to say 11. Not sure. It's either 11 or noon. I always forget if it's, if the times are Eastern listed, then I think it's 11 first pitch tomorrow. So I'm sure we won't be tuning in during our work day, will we? We won't be watching that on the side. No, of course not.
No. You're not gonna be able to keep me away from it, man. I'll have it on.
Yeah, no, me too. But yeah, hopefully they can keep it rolling. Yeah, so on the other side of the bracket, Texas is kind of in the driver's seat. They won their opener and beat Stanford 4-0. They beat Nigel Kennedy 4-0, which getting 4 runs off of her is a pretty good feat. Then they turned around and beat Florida yesterday in run rule fashion, actually shut them out 10-0. That game wasn't even close. So they're rolling along just like we are. So it looks like we're headed for a clash with our rivals down south, potentially in the championship series, which will start on Wednesday. Those are the championship series are stressful enough, but when it's against your rival, it just
Right.
takes it to a whole nother level. So yeah,
that would be a fun series, man.
Yeah.
Natty on the line and your arch rival. Whew.
Yeah, and they're a good ball club. We can hate them all we want, but they've yeah, exactly. They got a good ball club, but hopefully we can finish off our 4-peat, and what sweeter way to do it than to beat the Shorthorns. I'm not a fan of that coach either. He likes running his mouth a little bit. So
He's an asshole.
Yep.
He's an asshole. Like just a big old asshole.
Yeah, he's crying about the series being here, even though it's been here for forever, as long as I can remember. He thinks we have an unfair advantage, which is just his way of making an excuse, before we hand it to him next week.
Yeah. Yeah, he likes to complain, man. He really does. I mean, I couldn't imagine more of a coach that would fit in a Texas culture than Mike White.
So if both of us take care of business tomorrow, then championship series starts Wednesday. It's best 2 out of 3, so it'll be a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday if necessary. So maybe we ought to do a live.
Yeah, let's do a live show.
Do a live show. 1, 2, 3 days, whatever.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can make it happen, man.
Yeah.
And we had our first guest on. We're gonna have our first guest on here pretty quick, and maybe in the same week we can do our first live show.
Yeah, that'd be
Why not?
awesome.
Let's do it.
Yeah, sure. Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's take a quick break, and then we'll get JY queued up, and we can jump into some offensive line talk. Just go from there.
Yeah. So get JY out of the green room. Just thank you for everyone listening to Champion Standard. This is a fun project, and we appreciate you guys joining us for it. And please like, comment, subscribe, and we'll keep doing our thing.
We'll be joined by a special guest today, JY of the Football Brainiacs. We're gonna dive into some offensive line talk today, and we got a lot to kind of run through here in a little bit. I'm going to start us off and just mention the projected starting offensive line for OU this coming fall after the spring. Right now, I know we lost 9 guys, brought in 5, 4 or 5, I can't remember. We lost 5 starters last year, so Bill Bedenbaugh's got a pretty good rebuilding job ahead of him. Looks like the center position, we kind of had a tough break in the spring. Troy Everett got hurt, of course, and that left Josh Bates there to kind of take over. So we kind of had to pivot really quick and ended up getting the transfer out of SMU, Branson Hickman, to come in. He's got a lot of experience. I want to say like 33 starts, so he'll probably come in and be our starter with Bates backing him up until Everett gets healthy. Right tackle right now, it looks like Jake Taylor's kind of the guy. I know that's one of those position battles from what I hear that's going on. I think Spencer Brown may be the guy that's pushing him a little bit. So we'll see if Jake Taylor or Brown ends up being the starter at least game 1. I know Bedenbaugh likes to kind of mix those guys up the first couple of games anyway. And then left guard, the transfer from Washington, Gary Hatchett, looks to be the starter there. And I know he's getting a push a little bit from the redshirt freshman. Heath, is it Ozada or Ozida? I never can say that right.
Pretty sure it's Ozida.
Ozida? Okay. Gary Hatchett got hurt last year and ended up coming back in time to play in the Pac-12 championship and then the CFP games. So he's got all kinds of experience, including the playoff experience. And then a couple of guys we're going to probably dive into a little deeper today. We'll talk about Jacob Sexton here in a little bit. The redshirt, I think he's a redshirt sophomore. Got hurt in a Cheez-It Bowl a couple of years ago against Florida State and returned and played a few games last year. I want to say he returned in the West Virginia game.
Mm-hmm.
And then at right guard, we got the transfers from North Texas, Febechi Nwaiwu coming in, freshman All-American. When he was at North Texas, Seth Luttrell offered him a scholarship back in 2022. A lot of experience as well. As I think he was the best offensive lineman on that team. So I think he's played in 24 games and started 20. So he brings in a lot of experience as well. And hopefully he can anchor that interior for us next year. So that's kind of the projected guys right now. So yeah, let's dive in a little more. Rob, I know you got some things you want to talk about, and then JY, we got him on here for his expertise.
Yeah. So we're gonna take a look at some numbers. This is out there on the website championstandard.com. You can take a look at this and play around with it. There's some pretty cool stuff here. So like what we did is we took the projected starters for every SEC opponent that we have on our schedule. We didn't care about other SEC opponents. We don't care about what's going on in the nation. We got to focus on the schedule that's ahead of us, where the teams are in front of us. Also, where's OU's O-line kind of compared to some of the teams that we've got in front of us? So, like, we've got OU's projected starters here, and let me zoom in a little bit more. So, we've got Febechi Nwaiwu, Jacob Sexton, Hatchett, Branson Hickman, Jake Taylor. Right now, we've got Slida right tackle, like Brad mentioned. That's going to be a huge camp battle as well as left guard. Total snaps, we've got 2,400 on our starting front, but as we kind of look and the Spencer Brown and Michael Tarquin is another guy that we brought in, they add some good experience, but I'm going to take a dive into one thing about what's been kind of missing as far as the narrative on Coach Beatonbow. So this right here is a graph. We're looking at pass block efficiency. This is total fails as far as sacks, hits, hurries, pressures against the quarterback divided by total snaps. And a history of that all the way back to 2017. And this crimson line here obviously is OU. And I selected 4 other teams to kind of compare it to. We got Alabama, Georgia, LSU, and Texas. And I want to, starting from 2020, so we're talking the last 4 seasons, OU has been nothing but consistent under Coach Beatonbow. And if you're talking about 4 years of consistency, you're talking about multiple guys coming and leaving the program, and yet he still delivers a great pass blocking offensive line. And you can see kind of some of the trends right now. You can see Texas up here at the 9%. They're dropping. Well, they've started developing their O-line. You can see this line here. This like kind of beige line is Alabama. They did not have a great year last year. The Alabama line that's going to be fielded even next year is not really on Bama standards. But this blue line here is Georgia. And the last, you can see how in the last, basically since 2019, they've been a really consistent line. This spike here for OU in 2019 is when we graduated all our Joe Moore Award winners in Drew Samia, Cody Ford. There was also Bobby Evans on that line who jumped to the NFL the next year. I mean, this 2019 line is all the young guys. You have Creed, you have Marquise Hayes starting his first year. You had Tyrese Robinson starting his first year. That year was a pretty big turnover year, but ever since then, we've been right on this line of just 6-7%, which is one of the best in the country. So I kind of wanted to set that up because I feel like no matter how, the turnover in college football is much different in the NFL. Guys have to leave, and Coach Beatonbow has always been on a steady line at developing guys, regardless who's in front of him. You just need to give him a pool of talent of guys, and he, like Brad alluded to earlier, he'll work in his best 5, and he'll have a good line. So going back to our opponents here, I'm going to start with kind of go in order of how we play them. So just kind of what we're going to do is we're going to do like a preview and kind of a situationally what each of our opponents are in, and kind of situationally what does the outlook for that team look like. And then we'll come back and round back to OU, and then we're going to dive into the film. So Tennessee, a Joe Moore Award semifinalist from last year. They brought 3 of their seniors back in Spraggins, Cooper Mays, and John Campbell. They added Lance Hurd from LSU. The reason why they got onto this Joe Moore Award list is because they were ranked 2nd in the SEC in rushing yards per game at 213 yards. The one big hole on their O-line is left guard. They're looking for a guard right now. We've got Andre Carrick, but they have about 2 or 3 guys that they're going to rotate in, but their big fall camp battle is they need a guard. They're looking for a left guard. Coming down to Auburn, they have their starting 5. They got a transfer and Percy Lewis. The problem at Auburn, and you could go back to that pass block efficiency graph, and you can even filter specifically for tackles. They are not a good developing tackle program. They really, really struggle with tackles. This Xavier Miller, I mean, he had nearly 42 fails last year, 14% of pass efficiency, which is not good. The higher the number, the worse. That means they're failing more often than their snaps. They have a good center, all conference center in Connor Liu. But besides that, they're banking on all these guys just take us next step and get better with experience. That's their, at least that's what, because they didn't really add too many guys, but that one Percy Lewis. So, coming to Texas, I'm going to probably barf when I say this, but this is a pretty good, pretty good offensive line. This is another Joe Moore Award semifinalist. They return 109 career starts. They're led by their left tackle, Kelvin Banks Jr. Brad and I have even, we've looked at some film of him. He looks, I mean, you don't have to watch too much of him. We watched maybe 2 or 3 games, and it's the same. I mean, he's a good player. Interior, they bring back Jake Majors, Hayden Connor, and then DJ Campbell at guard. Looking at how many snaps, they had nearly 2,100 pass blocking snaps last year, and they only gave up 4% pass block efficiency. So that's pretty good. When you're comparing that 2,100 snaps, is pretty much the most pass blocking snaps out of all our opponents, and they give up fewer sacks. It's pretty fewer fails. So they are considered one of the best pass blocking O lines on our schedule. Coming down to South Carolina, not a lot to say about South Carolina. They've got one lone bright spot in left tackle Bobolade. He played 9 games. He got his first start against Georgia and did really well. Besides that, it's pretty much a hot mess. They give up a ton of fails, and the SEC most 190 fails on 1,500 snaps. Just not a whole lot to say there. They're not very good. Coming down to Ole Miss. Now, Ole Miss is kind of interesting. So Ole Miss last year, they had a lot of injuries, a lot of guys that miss a game here, a game there, and they had a lot of shuffling. They bring back 4 starters with multiple games, and then they went into free agency and they got 4 more dudes. And so they've got by far the most returning snaps, and they have the most returning bodies as well. So out of those 4 guys, they added North Carolina left tackle Diego Pounds, who started about 8 games. They also signed guard Nate Kalepo and guard Julius Bullo from Washington, who was honored with the Joe Moore Award. And they bring back starters Jaden Williams and Caleb Warren. Missouri, we're kind of familiar with Missouri. They're slowly becoming our next arch rival. Another Joe Moore Award semifinalist. They added Caden Green to be their right tackle, Marcus Bryant from SMU to be their left tackle. Their strength of their line comes from the center Connor Tollison, who is most likely the best center in the SEC, and right guard Cameron Johnson. This could be a pretty good line, and we'll get into this later. But there's some question marks on the depth of that line. And then coming down to Alabama. So Alabama, they sent J.C. Latham to the league. They sent another tackle to the league. They added Parker Brailsford from Washington to be their center. Probably going to end up being their best overall lineman. They bring back Ty Booker and Jaden Roberts. The problem with Alabama right now is figuring out what is going to be their right and left tackle. They had an heir apparent in Elijah Pritchett, but he has tons of legal problems. He's got some legal off the field issues that he might not. I mean, we don't really know. It's up in air because he's got like multiple. I think he's in like a felony investigation. And then Caden Proctor. We all know who Caden Proctor is. Former 5-star player. He was the guy, the player that jumped to Iowa and then jumped back to Bama. He did not have a great statistical year. He ended up grading out pretty not too good. He gave up 12 sacks last year and has probably one of the worst pass blocking efficiencies I've ever seen from a lineman from Bama. So they've got some questions there at tackle. They've got a young, inexperienced a right tackle, kind of waiting the wings, named Warbley, I think. So not exactly the line that we're used to from Alabama in the mid 2000s, early, those lines that just mauled people that just kept churning out. They are genuinely having some um, rebuilding line years. So, and then our last opponent, LSU, this is probably the best offensive line in the SEC. They returned 4 starters from a Joe Moore finalist. They've had the same, like 4 of these guys, I think, have played 3 straight years together. Will Campbell, their left tackle, is going to be a first round pick. Emory Jones, their right tackle, most likely going to be a first round pick. They lost, LSU, they lost a ton of skill guys. They lost to Jaden Daniels. They lost to Malik Neighbors, the Brian Thompson Jr. They're not going to be throwing the ball 35 plus times a game and scoring 43 points per game like they did last year. They're going to lean on the run game. Last year, LSU rushed for 200 yards in 6 straight games. So they're going to be running the ball. They're going to be pounding the rock. So, little quick preview on each of the teams. Going back to this little graph here is return experience. This is how many snaps from college experience 2023 are on each roster. So this includes all the free agency moves. So this does not look at what you lost and like what you had last year. This includes all the guys that are coming in with you. And so right now, Ole Miss, again, they had 4 or 5 guys that started, and then they brought in 4 or 5 guys more. They're bringing about 6,300 snaps worth of experience, which is a lot. I mean, that's a ton of snaps. But I want you to take a look here. Oklahoma is 5th. They're 5th in the SEC when it comes to return snap experience, college football experience. They're 5th. Not 5th to last. They're 5th at the top. So the only line, you got A&M, Missouri, Texas, and Ole Miss are ahead of them. But and another thing, you come over here to the right. This is the player count. So this is how many players that add college experience that came back to football that's on your roster. Again, Ole Miss leads with 14. Oklahoma's second with 11 in the SEC. They have 11 guys that have gotten on the field and played. And they're 5th in the league in snaps. Because when you add a Hatchett and a Hickman and a Brown and a Tarquin, it matters. And when you've got a Coach Beatenbow that is a model of consistency, if you give him a pool of players, he's going to find his best 5 and he's going to rock and roll. And coming back to our arch rival, Missouri, like I mentioned, how their starting 5 look pretty good. They only bring 7 guys back, and I will tell you, if there was all this narrative of OU, are they SEC ready? Can they hold up to an SEC schedule? What happens if you have injuries? Blah 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 blah. You can take that and go to Missouri. They're the ones with the real issue. If they have an injury to one of their starters, they have guys behind them that do not have a lot of experience. And I'll tell you, and you see LSU there with 7 as well. They don't have LSU players in their line 2 versus LSU's line 2. So, I mean, if there was anybody that was going to be questioning depth issues at O-line, I would say Missouri would be at the top of the list, not Oklahoma. So, I'm sick of looking at numbers. Are we ready to dive into some actual football?
Yeah, no, those are all good numbers. Thanks for pulling all that together. It kind of puts things in perspective for sure.
Yeah. We've listened to it for like 2 months now about this O-line. Are they going to be ready, or is their depth ready, and what this and that? And it's like every line is in a different situation, and ours is definitely not as bad as the rest of the league. Not even close. JY, are you ready? You ready to dive into some football, man? I'm sorry I bored you with those numbers. Good Lord.
No, man, I'm in awe of how smart you are, man. I am not. You're way above my stratosphere. This is creating spreadsheets and all that good stuff. That's out of my realm of expertise. I'd much rather talk about smashing heads.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's get
That's
into
why
it.
we got John here for sure. Yeah.
Let's talk about smashing heads. Who do you want to start with first? Jacob
Well,
Sexton or Febechi?
well, I think Sexton would probably be a good spot to start because I think a lot of where he's going to end up playing is really dependent on out of Tarquin and Hatchett, which one ends up being better because Sexton can play both spots at left guard or left tackle. We saw him play left guard in the spring game. I think he's better suited to play guard, but we can go down that rabbit hole if we want. But depends on how well does Tarquin and Hatchett end up playing because Sexton did a really good job last year at right tackle for the Sooners. He's a big, strong kid. I mean, coming in, Jake Taylor was the more ballyhooed recruit. Sexton came in out of Deer Creek right there in Edmond. He's so strong. He's probably one of the strongest guys on the team. And the thing that that happened to Jake is going into Florida State that year, he ended up tearing his ACL in warmups, ended up playing a series on a torn ACL, and his toughness is way underrated. And I think, it's a testament to his toughness and his grit that he was able to come back so quickly from that. I was kind of, I DM'd his dad on Twitter a little bit, and I was kind of concerned, if he was coming back too early, but he stayed healthy all year long and stuff like that. So I don't think we've seen the true Jake Sexton yet. And the reason that I say that, you can see him kind of, right there on that last one, he kind of got out athleted just a little bit. But I wonder how much of that was him not being 100% and, not being able to go through an off season fully, like what he's been able to do now that he's been healthy and he goes through, summer ball this year. And is he going to be able to shed some of those baby fat off of him a little bit? Because when he stays square, man, he's powerful. He's a difference maker out there, and he's a hell of a good player. I like Jake Sexton a lot. I think he's a junior this year. I think he did play there as a true freshman, and I think Jake Taylor is the guy that's the redshirt sophomore, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I was gonna say, I mean, he's got the size and obviously the arm length there to play tackle. You mentioned what's gonna happen at left guard with Hatchett and the other player, but I really hope that OU can get through fall camp confident at left guard and find a left guard and keep him at left tackle because that's where I feel like his natural position is. That's where he's going to end up playing. You want him to play in the NFL's left or right tackle.
Sure.
And you can tell in the West Virginia and the BYU game, like I think he was getting his confidence back. And like you said, it takes some time after an injury, and you gotta, missing all of base, like you said, all of off season and not having that strength. And I'm really excited to see what he does this year, and I really hope that he stays healthy. Right? I mean, we need this guy. This guy has to be like the leader of the pack. He has to be the leader of the pack. Got to be the key cog. And but what do you think are some of his strengths as a tackle?
Well, it's a hell of a segue. It's funny you bring that up. He's a beat and bow guy, right? And I say that because he is the prototypical beat and bow recruit, and he does it every year, year in and year out. He did it with Creed Humphrey, did it with, he inherited Bronson Irwin, but you saw it in the 2014 Sugar Bowl where the guy plays guard, but he's able to kick out, play some tackle there. He's so athletic, and Sexton is that guy. Plenty athletic enough to play tackle, but he's also powerful and nasty enough to play inside. And I'm kind of a nerd, so when I view an offensive line as a unit, I think of the old medieval castle, where they got the big battering ram they're trying to knock down the door, and and your guards and your center have to be the tip of the spear on that thing, right? They have to be the guys that are moving people out of the way. Whereas on the edges, you still got to be physical at tackle, but you know, an opponent's best athletic pass rushers are going to be on the edges, right? So you've got to have a little bit more athletic guys and a little bit longer guys to handle those athletes that they're throwing at you out there on the edge. And so Beatonbow gets these guys that are combo recruits. Drew Samia, he did it, started as a true freshman. It finished up at Oklahoma playing guard. You had Cody Ford do it, started out at guard, ended up playing tackle. Now he's a tackle in the NFL. You saw Ty Robinson do it there, and so it goes on and on and on. And even Creed Humphrey was a high school tackle there at Shawnee, and he turned him into a center at Oklahoma. So, I mean, Sexton is that way. He can do that, and I think in college football, especially because coaches' livelihoods are on the line in a lot of cases, they have to figure out who do we trust the most. And I think that Sexton, that guy, he's that linchpin for Coach Beatonbow, where he says, I have a known commodity. I can put him at guard or tackle, and let's see how Guerin comes back from that injury. He's a good player up at Washington. Let's see how he's doing. Same thing with Tarquin. He played pretty well there at Florida when he was there at first, and then he goes out there in that Tybo strength and conditioning with the deal they got going on out there at USC with Riley, and thank God he's gone. But that's another story and probably another beer or two. But he didn't get the type of coaching that he's getting now. And when I watched the tape, because I went back and I watched some film on the spring game today, when I turned on that game, when I saw it the first time there, a couple months ago, I was really nervous about what we were going to see in the spring game based on what everybody was saying. Coming out of the reports you were hearing here and there about Bates couldn't get a snap and all this, that, and the other. And I tell you, I don't know that there was a guy that I was more impressed with than Tarquin during that game. During that whole time, I mean, he looked really natural at tackle. I was very surprised because, he's kind of the whipping boy of the whole USC fan base last year. And, people are all on the message boards talking about, well, we're glad Beatonbow missed on him the first time, because both Hatchett and Tarquin were guys that Beatonbow was after as high school guys,
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So, I mean, playing the long game in the transfer portal is huge now, and so he ends up, at the end of it, he ends up getting both of them. So they're already kind of Beatonbow guys. They knew who he was before they came here. Sorry, I couldn't spit it out. But Tarquin is a pleasant surprise. So, I think, and I hate to say this, but I think where Sexton ends up is going to be more dependent upon who plays better out of Hatchett and Tarquin. Because like you said early, Rob, you said that Beatonbow has a track record in the last 11 years. He's going to put the best five as a group on the field that he can.
Yeah.
And Sexton gives him that flexibility to say, hey, if Hatchett's playing better or if it's Tarquin, I trust Jake enough to do either job, and if worse comes to worse, and let's say, nobody really separates themselves at right tackle. Guess who can play right tackle? If you got Hatchett and Tarquin can play both left, so it's a mix and match thing there. And I think, Coach Beatonbow doesn't get nearly enough credit for being the mad scientist that he is, so
right.
He's got some pieces he can move around. I mean,
Absolutely.
Sexton played right tackle all last year, so it's not, not out of the question. But
So you think?
Go ahead.
So you think Sexton and Tarquin could be your bookend tackles next year?
It's possible because one of the things Beatonbow does is he moves people around to, let's do it and let's see what happens. Because until you see how guys play next to each other, you don't really know how it's going to work out.
Right.
And going through spring, everybody was concerned about Bates and the snap and all that, but Beatonbow standing there with his arms folded, thinking, I've got Hatchett who can play center. the whole time,
Right.
you know, and then you get Branson Hickman in the transfer portal, who was all Conference USA. And I
Right.
know everybody's like, you know, Conference USA, Schmay, but I'm telling you, as a former college player, man, if you're first team all conference in any league, you got to be a heck of a player. So, you know, and the other thing you can do with a guy like Bates is nobody's ever complained about his physicality. You know, if he ends up being one of the more physical guys in camp and Hickman steps in and takes that center spot, you can see Bates battling for a guard spot. So, you know, there's a lot of different things that Coach Beedenbow can do to, you know, to protect Jackson Arnold, because the one thing that we can all agree upon is this is probably the most talented receiving core that the Sooners have had in my recent memory. And
Yeah.
I've been following Sooner recruiting since I got done playing ball in, you know, late 90s, early 2000s. And so I don't know that the Sooners have ever been stacked like this at receiver, you know.
Yeah.
So this, you know, and it's an old cliche, but cliches are cliches for a reason. You know, this team will go as far as the O-line takes them.
That's right.
So that left guard spot looks like a really massive camp battle. Like that looks like just as far as camp goes, probably as looking at the entire offense itself, that left guard spot is probably the most important at figuring out. Don't you think? I mean, you just mentioned the wide receivers and you got all these tackles that you can move in and out, but that left guard looks like, with the young guys and the veterans to figure out, who we can put there.
Yeah, and I think too, you know, the mentality of a guy like Spencer Brown, who comes in, you know, thinking that he's going to be a starter, and then Jake Taylor plays better than him in the spring, and then the other two guys, you know, that we've talked about, Tarquin and Hatchett, and even Hickman, those guys are all seniors, right?
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
coming to Oklahoma thinking, okay, I need to do,
Right.
you know, what Cade Matire did. I need to come in and be able to potentially get on an NFL roster. And, you know, I know Beedenbow and Venables didn't make any promises. You're going to have an opportunity to compete. But at the same time, I mean, loss of employment is a huge motivator for anybody. So,
Yes.
you know, and these guys are coming in thinking, I want to be, you know, on a Joe Moore award winning team, and they understand the expectations and all that type of stuff. I think that mentality they have if they want to be a draft pick, because another lesser known fact, you know, among the Beedenbow vitriol where he can't reel in the 5 stars, in the meantime, you know, his last 2 pairs of starting tackles have all got
Right.
drafted.
I
Yep.
know.
Right.
I hate that
Crazy.
narrative, man.
It's
I
crazy.
hate that.
Yeah.
I hate that board stuff where they go off on Beatembo not being able to recruit 5 stars, and I hate it so much every time I see a comment. I have to hold myself back from really ripping into him when you can see all the dudes that he puts in the NFL. I mean, in the last 4 or 5 years, it's been like 14 guys have been drafted, something like that. It's like
Yeah.
14 guys in the last. I mean, that's I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't where he goes to off O line is really hard to even identify in high school, to even project those guys from high school to college level, and it takes a talent evaluator to be able to identify. And Beanbo's got his formula, like you mentioned, like those blue collar, nasty, mean, tough guys. He'll take that guy. It doesn't matter if it's a 3 or 4 or 5. It doesn't matter. Like he can take that guy and he can mold him into a league machine. Like he just, and Brad in the last show was going on about how we're an O-line factory, and that's exactly what we are. We're an O-line factory. We're just
Yeah.
going to keep churning them out. As long as we got Coach Beatenbow, we're going to keep churning them out. We're going to end up having, draft pick after draft pick. So, I'm not worried about this line at all. I think even having the perspective of seeing what other teams are going through, I'll take the best O-line coach in the country and the guys that he's identified to be his 5 every day of the week. So
Yeah, he's definitely, you know, he's definitely a guy. He looks for raw materials more than he looks for a finished product, I think. And, you know, for me, when I evaluate offensive line, the biggest thing I look for is he nasty, right? Because as a big guy, because I mean, I was 6'1", 210 in the 7th grade, right? So I mean, as a big guy, you're always told by your mom, your teachers, and everybody else, be nice. You don't know your own strength. You're going to hurt somebody and all these things. And then all of a sudden the dads throw a helmet, shoulder pads on you and think you're going to be able to flip a switch and walk out on the field and just start killing people.
Mhm.
And most people that are average size don't have that problem, right? They don't have that problem. You've been conditioned your entire life to be not nasty. Now it's time to go be nasty, right?
Right.
And so
Yeah.
it's uncommon for a big guy, especially when I watch his film as a young guy, a high school kid, when he's a sophomore, when he's a junior. Is this kid playing the whole whistle? Is he trying to bury somebody on every play? Because it's hard to bury somebody on every play. It's hard to keep your legs moving and play hard. It's easy to just stop. I mean, the ball's gone, the play's already downfield or it's going the other way or whatever. I'm going to stand here and watch my friend run, and all this other
Right.
stuff. I mean, there's a whole multitude of factors that come into it. But if you can see a kid that's playing whistle to whistle, that is just mashing people you think of a Duke Robinson where he's going to get a
Oh,
penalty, and you're like, damn it, man, why don't you just cut
Um,
that out,
Yeah.
But
That was
you'd rather
Cody Ford. That was Cody Ford too.
absolutely, and you'd rather have to reel a guy in than kick him in the butt, right?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that 15-yard penalty is almost worth getting in that D lineman or that linebacker's head that I've got this big sucker coming downfield getting ready to kill me, and he's going to be doing it for the next 60 minutes. So you got that. You can tell, at least I think you can. You can tell if a guy's a hard worker on tape, and then they just have to be athletic enough. I think a lot of times people get enamored with these dancing bear types where, oh my God, look at how fast he is.
Right.
He's an offensive lineman. He ran a 4.8 40. I mean, when's the last time you saw an offensive lineman have to run 40 yards? Right. I mean, you got to have short area quickness. You got to be nasty. You got to be strong. You got to be able to move people in an instant, because when you got a guy like Sawchuck running behind you, you got to move people out of the way quick,
Yeah.
So you got to have that short area quickness, and you got to be nasty, and you got to be mentally tough too, because if you get beat on one play, you got to come back, because as your spreadsheets and the diagrams that you had going off of this, you're only considered really good as an offensive lineman if you're successful 96% of the time.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So
That's 96% is really, really, really dang good. 90,
yes.
you're looking at like 93, you're still pretty dang good. So, I mean, you're going to have fails. You're going to have fails. You're going to have bad snaps. It's like you said, it's coming back to the next. You're learning, right? Your first quarter, you're seeing the defense. What are they trying to do? Third quarter, you're making adjustments. Fourth quarter, you're wearing the defense down. Now it's time to turn it up a notch and bury these suckers. So
Right.
You're going to have bad snaps. You're just gonna have to come back to the next snap, learn from your mistake, and keep on trucking. I mean,
Yeah, and I
mean,
like that you mentioned nasty guys, because that was one of the takes on Bates when he came in last year. There were stories he came in, true freshman, just mixing it up with guys in practice, and they had to, just what you said, they would have to tone him down in practice, and that's what you want, just a guy coming in there picking a fight with those guys all day long.
Yeah.
You also mentioned, bringing a guy in that's raw. I think that kind of fits the London Akinkumi. I mean, he's as raw as they come, but he's got all the physical tools in the world. And Beatonbro just looked at him and is like just salivating, trying to get him on campus.
Well, absolutely. And you touched on the raw materials, but you look at how hungry he is. With taking extra reps and wanting to learn and asking questions and doing all those things, because it is an absolute luxury that these kids have elite competition to play against in practice, and there's no reason whatsoever that you can't get with a PJ Adebawore or one of these guys, R. Mason Thomas, and work on your one-on-one pass pro a lot. There's no reason whatsoever. And, I'm sure those guys do that to a degree, but it's got to be tough too because they don't want to beat the heck out of each other. But,
Sure.
it's, but yeah, Akinkumi has got all those raw materials. And as far as the ceiling goes, he's probably one of the higher ceiling guys you get.
Right.
And then the Autry kid, who's Marcus Dupree's cousin, he's another guy I'm really high on, but he's going to take a couple years to develop. And it's funny, every year the guys on the message boards, they love a guy when, he's a 4 and 5 star. And then once the ink is dry on that class, man, they're already, what are we getting next year? What are we getting next year? And you forget about them. And you get a guy like Logan Howland, who everybody knew was a developmental prospect coming in out of New Jersey, in a highly populated area, really, really elite athlete, but is going to have to put on some weight, So I think he finally got to like 305, 310. So he's a guy to keep an eye on in the next year or two to see if he takes that next step. Because, again, going back to that nasty aspect of it, as you've been on campus for 2 or 3 years and you got to go home every Christmas or every spring break or whenever you go home and you've got to answer all these questions by relatives and high school teammates about why you're not playing, the pride starts kicking in a little bit, and you start being nastier and you start doing the things that Bates did, coming in as a true freshman, to where you're willing to fight people to get on the field, because at the end of the day, that's what you're going to have to do anyway. And so it's almost like you have to grow into that, if that makes sense a little bit, because as I get older, I get nastier. And it was the same way when I was in college as a player also. So
Then you got EPL coming in, who looked like a track star. The one highlight I saw him
Sure.
running track at 280 whatever it was, 300 pounds, just mowing down.
And him and Eugene Brooks, to me, are guards all the way. They're a little bit, I mean, you just look at their physiques, right? They're square body, they're thick neck, they're just big dudes. And those are your guards all the way. If you can get them, they redshirt a year. It's almost an ideal situation to where you get them a little playing time here and there. Then you get Hatchett graduating, and then Nwaiwu is just a junior now. So, and we haven't even talked about him yet, but I thought he was probably the best offensive lineman in the spring game, looking at it. And he's just now growing into becoming, more of a finished product, right? I think going through Schmitty's offseason program served him really well, because when you look at, and I'm sure you're going to turn it on here in a minute when you get into the North Texas film, I mean, you look at how much different physically he is compared to when he was a freshman there at North Texas. I mean, he's just more powerful. He's more well built. He's probably a little bit more comfortable in his pass sets. He does a little bit better job of being square in a lot of area. But you just look at that guy. He's got thick legs. He anchors well.
He's a wall. He's a wall, man.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be a heck of a player. And it just goes to show, he is one of those quintessential late bloomers, right? He's not one of those guys that, was shaving when he was 14 years old and, all that kind of stuff. He's one of these guys that, had to kind of grow into becoming a man. And here he is, he's getting ready to be a junior. And I'm really, really glad they picked him up, because that's the one position on the offensive line that you don't hear any chatter about who's going to be the guy. Is that right guard spot, right?
Yeah. How would you like to be standing in between Nwaiwu and Dominic Williams?
Oh man, that's
in practice.
Well, it depends
those two will go at it.
Well, I'll just put it to you this way, man. It just depends on where the ball's going, right? So if it's going on play away and I got to get in their way, I'm okay with it. But but
yeah, I liked how North Texas, going through his film, they moved him around a lot. Like they asked him to pull around the line, counter some of the GT counter, some of the trap, and some of the pin and pull stuff. I mean, like they really, you don't really see that. Coaches are not going to ask you to pull around if they don't trust your feet. if they don't trust you to be able to move your feet or have the vision to find the blocker, they're not going to ask you. And they asked him to pull a lot. Like there was a lot of snaps I just decided to skip on to put it on this little thing, but they asked him to move around quite a bit.
Yeah, he's definitely, a bigger thing there too is, I mean, if you can't do the things they're asking to do, you're probably not in the game,
Yep.
and the coaches aren't going to call those plays either if you are in that spot. So,
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that coaches think about, talking about that trust factor. Having a guy like Wee Woo in the middle there, if they can find a reliable center, which I think Bates played pretty well in the spring game. I was kind of impressed with him, but you have to think that, unless Bates has one heck of an off season here in the summertime, that, Hickman has got to be the guy,
Mm-hmm.
coming in as a first team all conference, in major college, that you got the middle of that line just pretty much solidified. You got Wee Woo there, you got Hickman in the middle. And then think about it. That's not a bad proposition if you're, Jackson Arnold, if you put Sexton at that left guard spot. Now all of a sudden you got three studs right there in the middle,
Yeah.
and then you still got Jake Taylor out there on the outside if he ends up winning that job. And if it is Tarquin, I feel pretty good about that offensive line. And even still, if you bump Sexton out to tackle and it's Hatchett there at left guard, depending on who it is, you got to feel good about it, because the thing that you love about Wee Woo is he's kind of the guy that you want to be first off the bus with, right? He's that guy. He's going to get under people. He's going to dig them out. He's going to move them, like right there on that clip.
Yep. Yep.
His hands are impactful, right? If and it's funny how different sports translate differently, and the same stereotypes go with all this. But if you've ever been to a major league baseball game and you see how the ball jumps out of their hand or the ball flies off their bat, it sounds different, it just looks different. It's the same way when you're looking at offensive linemen's hands on the ones that were meant to do it, right? You'll know it when you see it, and you can see that impact with hands, because out of all the people in the United States, 350 million, there aren't many people that can do that. Right? They can just move a man bigger than they are or quicker than they are, and in that short amount of time, and move them out of the way when they don't want to go there.
Right.
It just doesn't happen unless somebody has a great deal of ability. And I think Wee Woo could be one of the guys that ends up being an NFL draft pick before it's all said and done, if he ends up staying healthy, so.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed with Febechi is definitely in the fourth quarter is when he starts really pancaking people. The defense is getting worn out, and in the fourth quarter, in the 4 games I watched him, he pancaked the same guy on the same drive. Like he just whipped people. He wears you down, and then in that fourth quarter, and his team needs to have a decent run to keep the drive going. They run to his side, and he literally just pancakes people over and over, and he was whipping the same guy. Strong as hell, man. He's strong as an ox. He's gonna be a hell of a good guard for us.
Yeah, that's where that nasty and that hard work comes in, because mentally, right now, what's going on with Schmitty, I truly believe, showing my age here, going back 25 years ago when I was playing, the toughness of a team is forged in the fires of winter ball and summer, right? When nobody's watching, there's no fans in the stands. It's just you and how much are you willing to vomit today, right? I mean, it's because it's going to happen, right? It's going to happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
you're going to do uncommon things because most people aren't willing to do it. And, a guy like Wee Woo that is willing to pay that price and play that hard all the time is going to wear somebody down, because you always hear, I'm going to give 110% and all this other stuff. Well, where was that extra 10% before? Right. And if guys have to do that only when it matters, a guy like Wee Woo or some of these other guys that play hard all the time, eventually they're going to wear that guy down. Right. And just like you said, they're going to pancake guys over and over and over. And there's nothing like getting into somebody's head. And as an offensive lineman, when you're down blocking on somebody or you're pulling around on power and you hit them and you can kind of hear that a little bit, right? Nobody else can hear it. It's just you and that guy. And you can kind of hear that and you can feel them physically give, and you know you got them. You know you got them. They've broken. And you can go back to the huddle, or when you're on the sideline and the coach is asking, can we get this yard? You'd be like, yeah, coach, I got this guy, because you've broken him, you've broken him. And he's that kind of player, it gets me fired up just talking about it,
Yeah, no, it happens. You can see it on film for sure. Like you can see some short yardage situations and they run to his side. They either pull him and he's leading the way, or he's just carving a little hole out in that B gap and he's pancaking people. I mean, like
sure, like right there. That
yeah, right there. Like
hurt,
I was like, I was good. Yeah, that's what I was saying right here. This is
your back's not supposed to bend this way,
yeah. Yeah. No, he was a fun watch. He really was. He was a fun watch.
Yeah, so you think about, especially on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, when you need that quarterback sneak or you need that quick dive right there. Especially with the zone read game now, you have to generate movement on that dive for the guy, because one of the things, unfortunately, our running backs don't have is a great deal of vision, right? That's the one knock that I have on our running backs. At least I love them, I think they can play, but the vision isn't all that great. You need to open up holes big enough for them to see them.
Right.
So
yeah.
And he does it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gonna that was a great ad.
Well, they're right there.
Great.
You see that last one there? He just buried that guy. And you think about this.
Yeah.
How much
right here.
How much different are you now compared to when you were 7 years old when you're 23?
Yeah.
Right? You think about the growth and the maturation, and then take that a step further and think he's doing this as a freshman. Right?
Yeah.
This is when he's still at North Texas. He's a freshman All-American. He's doing these things. He's doing grown man stuff to grown men, right? Because these are 21, 22-year-old guys out here that he's, basically making them do what he wants them to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's pretty wild.
And I love how he doesn't get the pocket collapsed right there, how he just sits, he anchors, and he's not back in the quarterback's lap right there,
Yeah, in the 4 games I watched, man, I saw him pick up the blitz. Well, there was some exchanges, a stunt coming across. He looks inside, center takes him. He had great vision, picked up the blitz, or picked up the stunt from the defense end. Even those loops and stuff. I didn't see him give up any sacks in the 4 games I watched. I didn't see him, even some of those quote unquote fails where maybe he didn't give up a sack, but gave up a pressure. Nope, didn't see it. Especially in the pass pro game. He's got good vision. It's really hard when you're sitting back and you've got guys moving left and right. He really does have a good feel. Yeah, that was kind of usually guards, especially young guards, you've got matched up with a speed backer that you can see them scream across your face and you just can't quite get there, or can't even get a piece of them to slow him down. No, he was moving his base left and right really well. Didn't overextend or anything. So pretty good.
Yeah, he's a heck of an addition. It goes back to that evaluation that Beedenbow's able to do. And you got to think Luttrell played into that too, being his head coach down there, coming up now, being the offensive coordinator. I really like that as a pickup. Haven't seen a lot of film on the Hickman kid. I need to dig into that and check it out. But, I'm excited to see what he can do too.
Yeah, that was next on my list. Actually, I was gonna ask you if you wanted me to send you some stuff, man, because I was actually gonna start digging into Hickman too, because I'm really intrigued with him coming back, coming to us with those 30 games and those 900 starts, 900 snaps from last year. and see what you like you said, he's an all-conference player. It's very intriguing what he'd bring to this team because like you mentioned that center and those two guards are very important to not have that pocket collapse. You got a young quarterback going into this league. He needs to have space to be able to step up into his throw. And that Hickman, I want to dive into him next.
Sure, I'd love to do that. And you think about where it sets up Beedenbow in the big picture. I still think Bates probably a year away. Not to say that he couldn't do it this year, but maybe, if he was able to, because he's just a redshirt sophomore now. He's a second-year player, so, or I'm sorry, he's a redshirt freshman. He's getting ready to be a sophomore next year. So, he could still end up being a 3-year starter, and that's the thing that Oklahoma fans, they take it completely out of context. They don't, in a healthy college program, unless somebody is just an amazing football player, you don't want true freshmen walking in off the street becoming a first-day starter. I mean, you think of the great ones, right? Like right now, the greatest tackle in football is Trent Williams, right? He wasn't a starter at Oklahoma until the Mizzou game that year, right? And that was like game 5, game 6. Something like that. Not very many guys can be a starter as a true freshman. So you think about next year, you still got Sexton, you still got you got the kingpins in there in the middle. You got Brooks, you got EPL, you still got Howland developing. You still got you got Autry developing. You got some of these studs that they're trying to get in on 2025. So it kind of, the way that it's starting to lay out, you can see the big picture, and these 1-year guys that come in like your Tarquins and your Hatchets and the Hickmans and all these guys that come in, they can give you that bridge for that 1 year to help these other guys have time to develop, and in the past,
So do we want Nwaiwu staying 2 years, or do we want him like looking like an all-pro and leaving after 1?
Well, I'm greedy. I want him to stay there all the time,
That's kind of where I'm at. Yeah.
and let him battle it out. But I mean, either way, it's a win for us, right? Because if he ends up playing at that level and plays himself in the first round consideration, man, God bless you. Go make your money, But that's just it. I mean, everybody's talking about the defense right now, and they're talking about all the skill talent Oklahoma has. If this offensive line can put it together, it can be a pretty cool year, because I think that, as bad as us as Oklahoma fans are upset about the disrespect we're getting going into the SEC, I can only imagine what it's like for those guys putting in the work down there, hearing it every day. And Schmitty and Venables and all those guys are in their ears about it constantly. Those guys they're probably eating gunpowder right now. Those guys are, I mean, I can't wait to see if it translates onto the field. But, the cupboard isn't bare for Beedenbow at all. He's got pieces. He's got pieces, so, there've been years where it's been a lot leaner and he's done a lot with a lot less.
So on a scale of 1 to 10, what's your concern level for this O-line being able to come together? 10 being like extremely concerned.
Well, the luxury that you have is you have 3 games there before you got Tennessee coming in as your first SEC opponent, and then you got, I'm not sure if you have a bye week before Texas or any of that stuff, but historically Beedenbow has had almost everything sorted out by the Red River shootout. And I'm gonna call it the shootout because I don't like calling it the rivalry. But it's I'm not. I'd say on a 1 to 10, I'm probably around a 3 or a 4.
Okay.
Just simply because he has probably forgotten more about O-line play than I'll ever know, and he's got guys. He's got guys that have played at a major college level. He's got a guy that was able to start at Florida, start at USC. I mean, at the end of the day, right, wrong, or indifferent, you're still starting at 2 very good programs. Right. Hatchett would have started last year had he stayed healthy. right? You got an all-conference center coming back, you know, and I know everybody says it's Conference USA, and I know I said that before, but I mean, he's got pieces. And then, you know, he's still got two guys that were kind of the bell cows of a recruiting class, in Sexton and Taylor, that may end up starting for him there too. And if if Taylor doesn't continue to win there, maybe it ticks Spencer Brown off and says, hey, you know, I came down here to start. I didn't come down to sit. So maybe they're fighting it out. You know, I mean, it's just, you know, iron sharpens iron. So, you know,
Yeah,
Grandpa used to say you got to put the tea bag in a little hot water to figure out what's in it. So, you know,
Yeah.
it's the truth.
Yeah. I mean, 5th most snaps from last year in the SEC is OU, and the 2nd most players coming back in the SEC. I mean, like, that's the talent pool right there that Beatonbow can form a best 5. More than enough.
It's an exciting time, you know, for a number of reasons. But as an O-line junkie, I mean, you look top to bottom, the freshmen he's got coming in. If you absolutely had to, I'm pretty sure that EPL could take some snaps for you if you had to. You could bump Sexton down inside. You can do so many different things there to move people around in a pinch if you have to, you know. And you got guys that have played a number of different positions, so.
Yeah, you'll probably end up having at least, you know, after your best 5, you'll end up needing at least 3 or 4 other guys to take, you know, 200 or 300 snaps for the year. You know, you're gonna want to get guys on the field and rotate some guys and keep fresh bodies out there. But I mean, you get into conference play, you find your best 5, you got to ride them right. You got to keep them out there and keep them hungry and keep them going.
Yeah, and I mean, again, unemployment's a huge motivator for an offensive lineman. So, you know, I mean, as an offensive lineman, I used to hate, you know, when guys are wanting to come in and rotate and do all that stuff because, you know, you play to where you never get tired, you know, as an offensive lineman, and it's strange. You want to be in there every play, you know. So, you know, a huge motivator is my offensive line coach used to tell me, don't make me not need you, right? Make it to where I can't live without you. You know, and if you can do that, then I'll stop thinking about pulling you out and I'll pull somebody else out.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
and you know, just having that mentality, that's a big deal. So you got to take ownership of it, and you got to be willing to fight for it.
Yeah, and you said it earlier. You know, the offense goes as far as the O line will take it. We have all that gifted receiving core. You know, running backs are good. You know, they may lack the vision, which you touched on earlier, and then of course you got Arnold sitting back there. So it is whatever happens up front will determine, you know, what we can do. So I hope they can come together because it could be some big things for us this year.
Yeah, because I can't remember the last time you had a guy like Deion Burks. You know, and then, you know, you still got Anderson and you still got Gibson out there. They're not chopped liver. And then you had, you know, Farouk's a good player, even though he had the fumbles, and you had, you know,
Anthony will come back.
Andrell Anthony, and then you got Petaway, who's still trying to crack the rotation, and you got some dudes, man.
Yeah.
You got some dudes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing
lot.
Venables has done is recruited, you know. So
Yeah, Brad, when we were going through our offensive breakdown, he's like, man, if Farouk is your 7th fastest receiver on roster, it might be a pretty deep receiving core. You know, we didn't Brendan Thompson too. I mean, Brendan Thompson had that long ball. It's another speed guy. I mean, it is deep. Like, there's a lot of dudes that can run. A lot of dudes that can run.
yeah, Zion Reagan's coming in. He's a guy that can fly, you know, all the way around. I forgot about Thompson, but his whole deal, man, if he can just stay healthy, you know, if he can stay healthy, I don't know that there's many people anywhere that can run with that guy.
Yeah.
And it just goes back to that tip of the spear argument. If they can keep guys from collapsing that pocket and putting those pass rushers in Jackson Arnold's lap, and he has time to throw the deep ball, you know, you could definitely take the top off some defenses and score a lot of points.
Yeah. Yeah. As much as we love Drake Stoops, and we'll always love Drake Stoops, you know, Deion's just got a couple more gears than Drake, you know. So
sure.
we'll see what happens in that slot position this year. So
Yeah, he makes fast people look not fast.
exactly.
Yeah. Exciting time.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, Brad, you want to wrap it up?
Yeah. Hey, man, we really appreciate you coming on. You're our first guest.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. I'm honored.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are
Yeah.
our first guest, and we really appreciate it.
For sure, man. I think it's awesome what you guys are doing.
Yeah, your knowledge is awesome. I never played football. I know that's obvious.
Nah,
Rob played a little bit in high school, so I like listening to y'all's evaluations because for me, I'm watching the game, and as long as my quarterback is standing upright and we're scoring points, I'm not really, my eyes aren't focused in the trenches like you guys are. So
sure.
I love
Sure.
listening to the evals here. It's been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's beautiful about football. It's way more about attitude than it is aptitude. So if you got guts and toughness, then you can fit on a football team.
No,
Yeah.
you'll have to come back and join us definitely.
Sure.
Whether it's before the season, during the season, or whatever. And I know we'll really have a lot of evidence and things to talk about
Sure.
during the season for sure.
Yeah, I'm thirsty for a championship season, man. It's been too long.
Oh
Too
my
long.
gosh. Yeah, we all are. That's part of the reason we're on here. We're just starved Sooner fans.
Oh yeah,
Pretty
we're
much,
so
yeah.
we're so mistreated. We're kind of spoiled, but it'd
Yeah.
be nice to put number 8 on display for sure.
Yep, I agree. Well, yep. We'll wrap this up. For those listening, please go out and find us. Like, subscribe, comment. Just comments are all welcome, and we look forward to having lots of podcasts like this. And JY will join us again down the road too. So we're looking forward to that. So appreciate it. Boomer Sooner.
Boomer.
Sooner.